math, and it was like over a decade, we saved over $380,000 between the two of us.
Hello, and welcome to The Edit. I am Whitney from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I'm Amanda from Seattle.
And I'm Erin from Nashville.
Today, I am so excited because I get to interview Erin. And we are so excited to have her on. I actually met Erin maybe 15 years ago. Was it that long? It was a while back. Mm-hmm. And in the interview you all had with me, she shared how we first met was she came to a photography group that we hosted. And I told Peter about how we talked about that and your story about how he had invited you. And it was so sweet. He said, I remember specifically Erin coming, and she was just so like wide-eyed and excited. And I just really wanted her to feel welcome. I thought that was so sweet. That. And so, ever since then, I mean, now you have a successful photography business and you've done so many different types of photography. Right now, you do mostly seniors, and you have a very cool studio in your backyard that we will talk a little more about. Yeah. So the first thing I want is I just would love to hear what inspired you and how you got started on this path to be a professional photographer.
Yeah. So in my past life, I was a high school English teacher. So I was always the kid with the camera. I feel like so many photographers say that. But like, I remember getting my first camera when it was like a gift exchange at school. And there was, for some reason, I did not participate in it. My mom brought a gift from home. I don't know why, but I got a camera at school, probably like first grade, second grade, from my mom. And so I was always like the person with the camera. I was on the yearbook, ended up being yearbook editor, like just always that person, right? But I never thought of it as a career. I didn't know any professional photographers, anybody who had made like a lifelong career of it. I had a few different majors. I ended up being a high school English teacher. I was supposed to teach. My degree was to teach home ec, by the way, family and consumer science. So
that's awesome.
I would have never guessed that. Wow.
Yeah. So my degree was to teach that, which I feel like makes much more sense than the English part because family and consumer science is so much more hands-on and creative. And so like, that's really what I wanted to do, but I was having a hard time finding an open position without moving like across the state or out of state. So, I got a job teaching high school English, but during my very first year of teaching, my best friend said, hey, so she wanted to start a photography business. I'm like, okay. And I remember sitting on my couch and we were like, trying to figure out what all she was going to offer and like her logo and all the things and just basically starting this business for her. So she starts it. She's taking photos for people. She books her first wedding and she calls me and she says, I can't do this without you. Like I will borrow a camera. I will put it on auto. Just come. Because you can help direct, you can just be like backup, like just go with me. So that was March of 2010 and I was hooked. And I remember after the wedding going home and telling my husband, like, I have to do this too. Like, I don't really know if I want to photograph weddings, but like the creative aspect and the being around people and just the whole thing, I was like, I need a camera. I need a real camera. I need to start doing this. So it was just, I was still planning on being a teacher forever at that point. It was just going to be like a side thing, a hobby. And then over the next few years, I found myself editing photos instead of grading papers during my planning period. And, being a teacher and being in school, like, you're around a ton of people who have kids. And so other teachers were coming and asking me to photograph their kids. And it just kept growing. And So 2012, I told my husband, I said, you know what? I was driving quite a ways to the job that I had. I said, I kind of want to quit this job anyway. What if I take a year off, give photography a shot? If it doesn't work, I'll just get another job at another school teaching somewhere else, and never looked back.
I
love
love
that.
it. So when you decided to quit your other job, how was your business structured? So like, what were you mostly photographing then, and how did you kind of continue to grow that?
Everything. Because I
Okay.
felt like that was like what you do to pay the bills,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I don't remember saying no to anything. And you know, you had your favorites. I was really good. I was a high school English teacher. I was good with teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, at the time I was, when I went full time, I was probably 23-ish. So I wasn't that far off from their age. I still shopped at the same places. I still, so senior portraits naturally became what mostly filled my calendar, but I was saying yes to whatever paid the bills. The other thing I was really good at was newborns. People, to me, it just felt normal, but other people all the time, the parents would say, "You're so patient with them," and I'm like, I don't, that's just, I figured everybody was, you know, this.
Yeah.
Anyway, like there are just certain things that I think you gravitate towards. And so newborns and high school seniors were mostly what I was doing at the time. I learned pretty quickly that weddings were not my thing. I just don't know what to do with couples. I don't know. Into like, you know, and so now when brides ask me, and for many years when brides ask me to photograph their weddings, I'll say, you deserve a photographer that's really great at weddings and that loves weddings. Like you deserve that as a bride, and it's not me. Let me help you find somebody that can do that for you. So I've always photographed a little bit of everything. The first year that I was full time, I was approached to enter a studio, and that really kind of, you know, made my business take shape a little bit. So would you like for me to tell you about my studio?
I would love. I was going to ask, like, what? So what made you say yes to being a part of a studio?
Yeah. So I jumped right into the studio conversation because I'm excited to share that part. I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today without all of the people that I was surrounded by. So you mentioned in the beginning of this show that I reached out to your husband, Peter. I was just asking, like, hey, could I go to coffee with you and pick your brain? And he invited me to the Pictage user group meetup that you guys led. So I can't remember if that was like the third Thursday of every month or the second Tuesday or the first Monday, but they were consistent.
I don't remember either.
I don't either. But there was one night of the month that was always the Pictage user group. And then there was another night that was another group. And then there was another night that was another group. And 2 or 3 times a month in Nashville, like 2010 was awesome. 2011, there were monthly meetups all the time. It felt like,
wow.
I mean, Amanda, I hate that you didn't build your business in Nashville the way that
I know, right? Seriously.
So that is where I met some of my biggest mentors and friends. And people ask me all the time, like, did you go to school for photography? And I'm like, no, but I got all my education in a little bit. I didn't have to Google everything. Like people were teaching me things.
I love that.
You just show up and you learn and you make friends. And then afterwards we would go get pizza and hang out. So at some of those meetups, I met some women who they already shared a studio, but they were moving into a bigger one and they needed more members just to pay the rent. And at first I was like, I don't want to share a space. I want my own studio. Because I'd never heard of anybody sharing a studio at this point. But it was the only way I was going to be able to afford it at that point.
Yeah.
And it was in a really cute community that had like, it's like a live, play, work type community. And the second I walked in it to tour it, I was like, y'all, I'm in. And it was so ugly. We remodeled it. It was super ugly. I was so excited to be, I could not believe that I was going to have the opportunity to have like a storefront, a studio. And I felt like it was a necessary step at that point to give me, for me to be like, I'm here, I'm serious, this is legit, you know, like I quit. People thought I was crazy for quitting a job.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think I partially joined that studio just to be like, I'm legit. I have a business. You have an address.
Yes.
But that also allowed me to really up my game with senior portraits and with newborns, to be able to have people come into my space, to offer hair and makeup right there, just to be able to do consultations and order appointments. That was when I started doing in-person sales. So all of that really helped me sort of just fine tune the business when I moved into the shared studio space.
Well, you know, I was like thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about getting to interview you. And I know right now, in terms of marketing ourselves, social media is pushed so much, but there is absolutely an important aspect of gaining clients, gaining relationships through that, like actual one-on-one contact with people.
Yeah.
And I hear that from you, that this is how you built your business, not because you had an awesome Instagram account, but because you had relationships with other photographers, with people that were willing to help you. And how would you say then that most of your clients came to you?
At the time, I didn't have any children. And I like to work. It's in my blood. And so I like being around people. And so I was just always networking and offering, and I'm not saying this is exactly how I would build my business again today, but I worked for free a lot. I would reach out to people and offer free photo shoots quite a bit because I knew that my work was good enough and that I can take care of people good enough to where they'll tell their friends. And so really in the beginning, it was networking, whether it was with other photographers who might refer people to me or people from church, anywhere I could find them, really.
Yep. That's how it goes.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, because at the time you didn't have kids. And so I would love to hear how, once you had kids, how that changed your business or how that changed you and working in your business.
Yeah. So, on a recent episode that aired when we interviewed Ambria, I had talked about how my girls were adopted. I have two girls right now. They're 6 and 2.5. No, well, just 2. Let's not age her yet.
I know. Let her stay a little longer.
Yeah. But it took us a decade to adopt Veda, our 6-year-old. And so she was born when, give me a second. Let me figure out how old my business was whenever, I started my business in 2010 and she was born in 2017 and she was born in March, like right around the time. So right around my 7-year mark. So I had a business for 7 years without children. And I really, my photography business was really, we were diagnosed with infertility right when I was starting the business. And,
that's hard.
we we did IVF and we were going through the adoption process and all of these things while I was, running this business. It really is kind of where I threw myself to have, to keep busy. And to not like fall into a depression because our house didn't have children in it. Mm-hmm. So again, I just liked to work, and I was a little bit of a workaholic, but the fun part about working in Nashville when you don't have children is, like I would do senior portraits downtown, and whatever part of town I was in, Chase would get off work and he would go meet me there, and we would go have dinner and drinks, like wherever it was that my photo shoot was. Yeah. And so I was always like location scouting with him on date nights or having date nights after photo shoots. And it was just always like work just happened pretty much every day. And then we landed wherever my photo shoot was, where now that I have children, and we've moved away from the city just a little bit, and I'm trying to do tumbling and occupational therapy and speech therapy and church and all of the things. I'm like, how do I get my photo shoots to come to me instead of me like going out and chasing all the fun? I need the fun to be in the backyard. So we built a studio right here at home. Last year was the first year, that I had the full year of having that studio here.
So cool. And well, I don't know, for anybody that's out there, you should go check out Erin's Instagram account, because she has a picture of what her amazing yard looks like. And then there's this beautiful glass studio. It's gorgeous. And I love, you've got to tell everybody about the design and the windows, because I love that story so much.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I was, I did have Veda at the time, but I was still hustling because I didn't know how to stop hustling when she came along. And with adoption, both of our girls were somewhat surprises. So I had commitments. So I was at this photo shoot for an online clothing boutique at the East Nashville greenhouse, which is this greenhouse in their backyard. It's a working greenhouse, but they allow photographers to come in and do photo shoots. And they made it out of a bunch of windows. And I was looking around while the models were changing clothes, and I was like, we could totally do this. And then I could have a space in my backyard and not be out, running around all of the time. Also, this was 2020, like late 2020.
Okay.
I'm like, it was really hard to do photo shoots in public.
Yes.
And so I was like, if it's just in my backyard, because I
there you go.
2 to 3 models, and the same stylist. It was like this little hub of people. I'm like, we could continue working and just do my backyard. Mm-hmm. So I told my husband, I was like, we should do this. And then my dad renovated the house he grew up in after my grandpa passed away. He took out all the windows and replaced them. And they were just in a pile in the backyard. And I said, what are you going to do with all of these windows from Pa's house? And he was like, I don't know. What do you, Habitat for Humanity, I guess, I don't know. And I said, can I have them? So this studio in my backyard is made up of all except for one. All of the windows are from the house that my dad grew up in.
I love that.
Yeah. I had a sweet client. I've photographed 4 of her 5 children so far because she's got one still in high school. I told her what I was doing, and she said, I have some really great doors that you need. And so we bartered. I did a bridal session for her daughter, and she gave me 6 really nice mahogany doors. So one of the walls is actually just doors. But so my husband and I built it in the backyard. My dad came over and helped a little bit, and my nephew came over and helped a little bit. And we just chipped away at it. And while we were building it, Arden, our second daughter, was born. Okay, this podcast is going to be 1,000,000 hours long, but you guys have to
no, keep going.
It's photography related, I promise. So this clothing boutique that I told you about, I worked for them for 4 years as their main photographer. At some points, I was their only photographer, and we photographed hundreds of articles of clothing on models per week, every week, year round.
Wow.
I have photographed over 10,000 items for them, like clothes,
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It was a unicorn of a job. It was, I don't know of anybody who's had a job like that. I don't think I'll ever find a job like it again.
Uh-huh.
It was a full-time photographer's salary, like more than I ever thought I would make. It was really probably 2 photographers worth of work though.
Okay.
But I knew that I was working too hard, and I kept trying to back up a little bit and like asking for help and trying to figure out how to have associate shooters. And that's not what the client wanted. And they just wanted me, and they wanted one person doing it all. And I couldn't step away from it. I kept trying and I couldn't. Finally, I was like, you know what? I think I'm supposed to just quit. And everybody around me was like, you're crazy, because this job pays you. And it happened. All the photo shoots were from like 9 a.m. to like 1 o'clock during school. They're like, why would you quit that? I was like, I'm telling you guys, I'm supposed to quit. And so Tuesday, November 16th was the very last photo shoot for them. And I have a video of me from Instagram that says, it's a big day, because it was my last photo shoot with them.
Yeah.
I pulled in the driveway after that photo shoot, and my phone rang, and it was someone that I knew from the past saying, I had a baby this morning. Would you like to adopt her? And
oh my gosh.
days later, I met her. And yeah, so the day I quit that job, our daughter was offered.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I am so somebody that believes that you get these feelings and these things like happen, and there's just something to it. And I just like, that's one of those stories where you're just like, oh my gosh, there's no way you could have ever planned it. There you go.
No.
So we talk a lot about seasons on the show.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just the whole theme of my life right now. Like, looking at my business, there has been the season to hustle without children, and photography has really filled a void and a need. It's filled a need for me. And then there's been the season of trying to hustle while being a mom. And I thought I was killing it. You know, I was like, this is the dream. And then there's the season of feeling like I need to pull back, but I don't want to pull back because I love work. And the conversations that we've had on this show have helped me really internalize the fact that I can slow down this year, and the work will still be there next year or the year after, or whenever I choose for it to be hustle season again. So I don't know how we got off. I don't know.
I love it. So, and this is what I love about hearing your story, Erin, is that I think these times when we know that something needs to change, it is difficult. I mean, we can look back and say, oh, that was absolutely the right decision. But it's very scary to take that step. And we know in our intuition and our heart, you know, from whatever guidance we have, when something's the right thing to do. And I love that you made those changes and you like followed that inner voice, even with everybody saying like, don't do it. Like, why are you doing this? And you knew it was the right thing for you. And, you know, I talked about last week, I think I held on to my business the way it was at the time way too long because I was scared. And so I just love that you're very like open to these new possibilities, and you've had so much come from that. And it was because of this that, you know, now you have this like studio in your backyard, and you're, you know, getting to do all these other projects, and to kind of pull it back into what we're talking about. You do have several projects going on, and you talked about sharing a studio, and you have a book that has it been it's been released?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So tell us about that.
my dear friend Karen, that she basically runs the shared studio that I was a part of.
Mhm.
It is currently an hour away from my house. So I was full time with that studio for, I think, 8 years. It could have been 7.
Mhm.
When we moved, I went down to part time. And then when Arden came along, I said, you know what, guys, I've got to just do my own thing in my backyard. But I was in the studio recently, and I was like, man, I miss it so much. Like, I was there with her just for a work day, and I was like, I miss this so much. So what we did, we wrote a guide. We feel like there's just this, people either think that they can have a studio by themselves, or they just can't have a studio. They can't afford it. I don't think that there are a lot of people who know the benefits of sharing a space, or they're worried that they'll have a space and they won't be able to use it when they need to, or that somebody will break or move their stuff. So we wrote a 96-page guide. It is a very in-depth guide.
Yes. That's awesome.
The benefits of sharing a studio and how we found the studio. We actually have had 2 spaces. So we were not allowed to renew a lease at one point. We had to find a new space. So we talk about different ways to start up your studio, the process of like day to day, how to do it, to just guard your own calendar, and how to make sure things are even and fair, and just how to make it successful. Because we, most months I was paying about $300 for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is like for most, I would say for most photographers, that is definitely a price point that is very doable. Like, you book 1 or maybe even 2 sessions, and you've more than paid for it. Like, obviously depending on what your session fees are, but wow,
We did some math, and it was like over a decade, we saved over $380,000 between the 2 of us,
oh my gosh.
as opposed to if we had gone separately,
Yeah.
So just the 2 of us had saved that amount of money by sharing it with other people. So we did. Yep. Can I tell you where to find it?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's at thehelpfulphotographers.com. Because Karen and I have a little bit of a side thing that's the Helpful Photographers, that we started a few years ago, but mainly the guide is just what we've put together to help people figure out that space. So yeah, the Essential Guide to Sharing a Studio is what that is.
Oh, I love that.
It's
How did
awesome.
I'm curious, how did that go writing the book, like a collaborative process and all of that? How was it writing a guide? I mean, you were a high school English teacher, so it's probably a little bit more in your wheelhouse than others, but it just, like, to me, like 96 pages seems like so daunting.
Well, we just kept thinking of things that we were like, but it would be helpful if we told them this, and we should probably tell them that. It kept growing. We thought it was going to be like a quick process. And then the more we got into it, we were like, we really want to do this right. And so it's going to be bigger than we had originally thought. We were just, going to do a 20-page ebook. But Karen and I we usually, we work really well together. And so it wasn't hard. It was hard juggling all the things, and getting it done. It took us a while to finish it, but, if it just helps a few people save a little bit of money while they're living the dream, it's worth it.
And you say save a little bit, like $380,000.
So much.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
That's such a great idea. And, I shared about how I had a space, but not like a whole studio.
Yeah.
And so when I was in Nashville, I taught beginning photography classes, and I would actually rent from someone who shared a space. So she shared a space with several photographers, and then they would even have people that could just rent it for a few hours. And that was really helpful for me because I didn't need that type of space all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's such a great option to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I might have done that before, like looked into sharing a space. That would be something I could do different
There
when
we
I
go.
started
Exactly.
there. Yeah. So then for you, Erin, if you could start your business over, what would you do different?
So I, of course, knew you were going to ask me these questions ahead of time. I even took notes because, like, don't forget to tell people this. This is your shot.
Yes.
I have 2 things of advice that I think I did well and 1 thing that I would do differently.
Okay.
I think this comes from being a mom of multiple children. You can't just pick one thing. You have to have multiple things.
Yeah.
So the advice, the 2 pieces of advice: find your tribe, find your people. So very early on, I found people who wanted to just help me learn. Chris Scott, the guy behind the scenes here at the Edit Weekly. I remember sitting at a Mexican restaurant with him after a photographer's meetup, and he was like, tell me, like, what's your plan? What do you want to do? And I told him, I was like, well, I think if I could just make up my teacher's salary, like if I could just be a photographer and just make up for the money where I quit my job. And he like laughed at me. He was like, I got it. I got you. Do it.
Yeah.
And he never steered me wrong. And the ladies in the studio that I've shared the studio with, there have been a handful. I mean, there have been probably a dozen of us over the years because some people come and go into Nashville and out of Nashville, and so some of the people came in and they changed, but the camaraderie and the sense of a rising tide floats all boats, and there's enough business to go around, and so we all just want to help see each other succeed. I would not be here. I'm very confident that I would not be here today if I didn't find the people that wanted me to succeed. And I think I see in these Facebook groups of photographers talking about how there's so much competition in their area, or they tried to reach out to somebody and they weren't nice, and keep looking because it's out there. And honestly, I think this is just personal experience, but I think the photographers who are more successful, the photographers who probably have the most to teach, are the ones who don't feel threatened by other, like they're more willing to share because they don't feel threatened, because they're like, you know what, I have enough business and there's still plenty out there. Like, let's just help each other. So find your tribe of people. That's my 1. 2, outsource as soon as you can. As soon as you can do it in a smart way, outsource. And I'm still learning this every day, and I still could be better at it, but I want to work on my business, not always in my business. And so if I'm always at the computer editing photos, I don't have time to think of the bigger picture. So outsource. And then what I would do differently, because I did not do this well at all, is set boundaries and to learn to say no. Because if you have to learn how to politely but firmly say no to the things that don't serve you and your business, so that there's room to say yes to the things that do. So I would have done that differently, is to just say no to the sessions that weren't really what I was good at, or to say no to the sessions at noon out in a field, or to say no to, selective color. I don't know. Just say no to, 11 o'clock emails and pushy things. Say no to all of those things so that you can say yes to the right things.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Well, and in episode 7, Ambria gives such awesome examples of ways to say no in like graceful and tactful ways. So if anybody wants to go back and check out that episode, that I love that she touched on that, because I think, Erin, like we talk about, it's so hard to say no. And when you do love to work and you do love to be around people, I think it's really hard to say no a lot of the time. And the other part about owning a photography business is most of the time you don't know how much money you're making every month. You don't have a guaranteed income a lot of the time. And so to say no can be really scary. But like you said, if you don't say no to the things that don't serve your business in the way that you want them to, that doesn't leave the room for you to say yes when there's something that comes up that really does fulfill you, that speaks to you, that speaks to your business.
And I feel like we've had this conversation. I had actually forgotten that Ambria she might have had the same answer I did, saying no.
I don't think, no, that wasn't her. That wasn't her, like, do things different. I knew that was like just a different tidbit that she had for that.
But I can't remember if we have said this out loud or not, but it bears repeating, even if we have said it. Whatever's in front of you right now, whatever opportunity is being presented to you because you earned it, or, because you're in the right circle, or you're putting out the right energy, or you're whatever it is. So it's not the last. I think sometimes we say yes to things because it's like, well, if I say no, then nobody's ever going to hire me again. That's what it feels like.
That's true. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But the opportunity's there for a reason, and there will be another one.
Yep.
That's
so right. Yeah, that's so good. That. I haven't thought about it that way. So I appreciate how you phrase that. Like, you are being asked because there's something you're doing that is attracting people to you and wanting to work with you.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, this was so good. I thank you, Erin. And there is, you are one of those people who's willing to share and teach others. And I think that's so amazing. And I feel like this when I'm working with the two of you, I'm always learning something new, and I appreciate how open you are about what you do. And you all are the type of people I like to surround myself with. Mm-hmm. So you're so right. Like, for longevity, when you build other people up, that's also going to help you, as you're doing that, be built up as well, because we like to reciprocate. So anyway, I could gush. Keep gushing, but I'm going to stop. I don't know if our listeners want to hear all of it. Yes. So we are going to have links to everything on here so that you can see Erin's guide. We can link to that, to her website, see her wonderful, beautiful studio she has in her backyard, and make sure that you have liked and subscribed to us on YouTube and you followed us. Everything, we'll have links to everything for you. And it was really great getting to chat with you all today.
Thank you so much. You guys are the best.
All right. We will talk to you next week. Bye.
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 And see.
Okay, Photo BFFs, if you have not subscribed, do that right now so you never miss a new episode. You can also find us at theeditweekly.com, where we have free resources and downloads for you to help grow your photo business.